Thanks for the introductions, Daniela, and welcome everyone to our session. I'm Heather Pollack, so I'm going to be starting off the presentation, and we'll be taking turns presenting various components of this presentation. So there'll be a little bit of handoff as we move from slide to slide. So today, what we wanted to cover in our presentation is just to talk a little bit about our move to experiential learning projects within our courses, within many of our courses, and our association with Riipen to help us do that. We're going to talk a little bit about what team members have been involved in helping make this process go smoothly and with all its ups and downs. We're going to talk about our journey for improvement, what we've learned along the way and some of the changes that we've made with each offering. And then we'll leave time at the end for some questions and comments from you, the audience. We'd ask that you hold your questions until the end, and Daniela will be inviting you to post your questions using the chat function, and we'll deal with them at the end. So thanks for that. So to start us off, okay. We are going to talk first about why we moved to experiential learning. So a couple of reasons, I guess. The first one, when we looked at our courses, we realized that several of our courses had a big final exam at the end of it, was worth a fair proportion of the evaluation for the course, and wasn't always the most appropriate or the most well received by students. So we were looking for an alternative to this big final exam. So that was one reason. The other reason, we looked at our student body, at our learners themselves, and soon recognized that a lot of our students or learners were actually looking for career advancement. They were either starting out in their career fresh from school, were in entry-level jobs, were looking for a way forward. Others may have been mid-career, looking for advancement through certification, and still others were looking for a complete change in career. So with this in mind, we thought what better way to do this than to provide, through experiential learning, a real-life way to apply the theory that they learned in the classroom to actual situations in a workplace. So with that in mind, we decided to explore experiential learning with Riipen. We decided to have the projects be group-based, so we'd have groups of 4 or 5 students. Through this, they would be able to develop teamwork skills as well. They'd have to learn to use some online collaboration tools, which isn't a bad thing. And there would be plenty of opportunity for networking, either with other students in the course or with company partners, industry partners themselves. So we thought this was a good idea, and we would move forward with it. So we were left with, how are we going to accomplish this? And we had a ready-made resource in Riipen, so it seemed like a match made in heaven. So Riipen, as Danielle explained, is actually it's a platform, a technology-based platform that brings together educators, employers, and students so they can complete real-life workplace projects. So for those who aren't familiar with Riipen, I can just really high level explain how it works from the educator perspective, from the employer's perspective, and from the student perspective. So basically what happens is, for example, an educator has a course to run, so they develop an assignment based on course objectives and so forth. They post that assignment on the Riipen platform, and it's basically out there for industry partners, potential industry partners to view. Industry partners who've signed up with Riipen can go on the site and look at all the various assignments that have been posted by various instructors. If they have a project that they think one of these courses might be able to help them with, they can find a group of students, groups of students to work on their project. They will contact, through the Riipen site, the educator associated with that course. The educators can then review the project, determine whether it might be a good fit, contact that prospective industry partner, and hopefully negotiate a good project for the student. So it's kind of like a matchmaking situation. Once a project has been negotiated, The instructor will approve it. Once the course starts, the students will be able to access that project by getting onto the Riipen site. They'll then connect with the employer directly, work on their project. At the end of the course, they will submit that project to both the instructor, who has the opportunity then to assign a grade to it, and they'll also submit that project to the employer, who can review it and provide them with feedback. So it's a really ready-made platform. We didn't have to do too much other than to learn about the platform and how to use it. So we went forward with Riipen, and basically our journey has started in, I guess, the spring of 2017, when we decided to look at 2 courses that were already running. 2 courses had final exams. One was online, the other was a face-to-face class. We ran those 2 courses with a Riipen project, and basically all we did was substitute the final exam with a Riipen project. So it was pretty rudimentary, not too much other change was done to those courses. We ran those, did a brief evaluation, and decided to move forward in the fall in the following spring with 2 additional courses in the Human Resources Management program. So we had a total of 4 courses in that first year. In the second academic year, we added 4 courses, 3 from marketing and 1 from web design. So we're sort of expanding out into other programs. And then this upcoming academic year 2019-20, we have 3 courses that are either in development or ready to go for fall and winter offerings. And those again are in digital marketing and marketing. So as far as projects go, you can see by this little chart that we've been rapidly increasing the number of projects that we've been able to negotiate with industry partners over the past couple of years. So the first year, we started out slowly with just 12 projects and 12 industry partners. This past year, we've upped it to 34 projects with 31 industry partners. So you can see we've been moving forward rather rapidly with the number of projects. And with these projects, we've had well over 1,000 students working with industry partners on these projects. So I'm going to pass it over now to Natalie, who's going to talk a little bit about who's been involved in this.
So making this happen has really been a team effort. So as you can see, we've expanded the projects from the pilots to a bigger team, different programs. So it was clear to us that it's not something that one person necessarily could take on, especially with the volume. And we wanted to obviously be able to share our learning between, the experience of one programs and then being able to share that learning with other programs as well. So we kind of built a team around this. So it's sort of a mix between the program managers like myself, who kind of look at the program and make some decisions around whether we should do it or not. Actually, you can go back, Heather.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. And then there's the Experiential Learning Coordinator, which we also thought would be an added bonus to take the load off of our admin responsibilities. We had to bring in the Instructional Designers as well, just to kind of have a bigger overview, especially as we had a lot of suggestions for improvement, and then the team of instructors as well. So all together, we've been working at this, making it a team effort. As a program manager, really my role and the other program managers was just to identify the courses that were suitable for Riipen. So making sure that it's something that we would be able to find partners for, that would have a need, and also something that didn't necessarily require, like we had courses, for example, on the HR program and compensation, and we had tried at first to do a Riipen. In the end, we realized that this was not suitable for the industry partners because they didn't want to release that information specifically, so we had a little bit of a harder time to secure partners. So really that's the role of the program managers to figure out what are the courses going to go in, sort of do a little bit of onboarding and provide instructor support. We look into compensating them as they take this on as well, or as they transition a course into a Riipen project, because it does involve a little bit of work. We also develop and work with our marketing department to develop initiatives on how to market this, and definitely because we see this as a value add for our courses. And then also managing the change. It is a change for our students. It is a change for our instructors. So trying to make sure that there's enough communication around that and that people understand the bigger picture, and we move little steps by little steps towards the goal. And then reviewing the course evaluation and the surveys and discussing those with the instructors, and trying to find ways to improve the program and the courses.
Okay, I'm going to cover the Experiential Learning Coordinator as a second role in this team effort. So basically, the role of the Experiential Learning Coordinator is to liaise with the various program managers, and you've seen how we went from one program manager, one program, to 4 programs and 4 program managers. So there's a bit of communication that needs to happen amongst those program managers. A big part of the role is to make sure that our instructors get the proper onboarding to Riipen, so that they're familiar with the technical aspects of the platform. They know the steps they need to take. And then I provide, as the Experiential Learning Coordinator, ongoing instructor support, because inevitably questions come up as the course proceeds, different issues come up. So I just, on an ongoing basis, provide that support. I also keep up to date with what's happening on the Riipen platform in terms of the McMaster CE portal. So I typically will post all the assignments for all the instructors at the beginning of the academic year, as many as we can get up there, just to give enough lead time for finding appropriate industry partners for each of the courses. So I post those assignments beginning of the term, before the beginning of the terms, and monitor on an ongoing basis to make sure that each course has an appropriate project. If I'm finding that no industry partner has been found for a project, then I quickly get in touch with someone from Riipen, and we put an extra effort in to find those partners. And then, as Natalie said, just supporting continuous improvement. So any feedback I get from instructors from Riipen about our processes, we share those, pass them along, and make some improvements. So the instructor role, of course, is a big one in the Riipen projects. It's the instructor who creates the actual Riipen assignment. So making sure that that assignment is something that would be doable by an industry, with an industry partner, something that meets the objectives of the course. Once the assignment is posted and project submissions start coming in from industry partners, the instructor has to review them, get in contact with the industry partner, negotiate the terms of the project, to make any tweaks to it to make it more better fit with the course, and then communicate with the industry partner once it's approved on an ongoing basis throughout the course, just to make sure that students are communicating well with the industry partner, that things are on track. And then a big part of the instructor role, because we're doing these projects in groups of 4 or 5, is just managing the group dynamics. So just making sure groups are functioning, they're knowing what needs to be done when, that they're communicating well with our industry partners. Part of the role of the instructor, we've added some online synchronous sessions that instructors are facilitating now, just to keep better in touch with students, sort of more that face-to-face component that seems to be missing in some of the online courses. And then again, providing suggestions for ongoing improvement. So I'll pass it over to Nydia now.
Good afternoon, everyone. So we as instructional designers, we serve 2 roles in one. On one end, we take care of managing the project as we redesign the course. And we also provide guidelines, and we work along with the subject matter expert or the instructors in redesigning the course. We focus mostly on restructuring the evaluation, so we incorporate the experiential learning project as one of the evaluations, the heavy load of the evaluation, and we work on the balance and the other components on how we'll evaluate the course, and also the learning path in terms of when the main milestones will take place for the experiential learning project along the course, when the live sessions will be held, and how all that works along with the learning of the content for the specific course. So first we see at what we need to do. We create a course plan. We make a plan of the redesign of the course. We set a schedule, and then we change hats and we work as instructional designers with the instructor in working on all the supporting documents that go along the experiential learning component for the course. That is, in general terms, what the instructional designer does. And as you've been seeing in the explanation from Heather, there are 3 phases in the evolution of our incorporation of the experiential learning project. So there are 3 versions, let's say, of how we design the experiential learning project in our courses. In the first version, Heather mentioned that what we basically did was we replaced the final exam for the experiential learning project. So not much of instructional design there. The project started in week 7, and the main components of the project was an interim report, which was mostly an outline of what the final report would be, and the final report and a peer evaluation. And the experiential learning project was weighed 30% of the entire evaluation. We got feedback both from students and from instructors on that first version. And we found that there was a big concern about all the grade all the grade of the experiential learning project focused on group work. Students found that there was a lot of effort for few marks. So they found that 30% probably was too low in terms of grading all the effort that had to be involved in completing the project as a group. Students also expressed that it was challenging to have to deal with 2 platforms. Our learning management system, which is Brightspace from Desire to Learn, and the Riipen platform. And also all that created affected the balance of life, work, and study for students. So with this feedback, we decided to started working on really on the instructional design of the course, and we created version 2 that we launched in spring of last year. So at this point, we decided we need to be a little bit more clear in terms of setting the expectations for students. So in all our marketing material, in all our program materials, information about the course, students need to be very well informed and make the decision of taking this course. And they had to be informed and had to be clear that it included a project that had to be completed in groups and in the online environment. So that we covered. We also started experimented with timeline of the project. We designed some courses, so the experiential learning project started in the 2nd week of the course, and it would develop and go throughout the term of a course, which usually lasts between 10 to 13 weeks. We redesigned other courses in which the experiential learning project started in week 9, or about between week 8 and 9, and students would have 5 more weeks, about 4 to 5 weeks to complete and solely work on their experiential learning project. So we tried that. We provided both those 2 options. We worked closely with Riipen to improve the guides for students in terms of how to use the platform, what the experiential learning component is, who has to do what, and provide a little bit more of guidelines and support to students and also to instructors. So the revision of the course in this second version included an experiential learning project that this time weights 50% of the grade. Students are now required to complete a group contract, which would work towards accountability of each member of the group. We started including live sessions so students can connect with instructors, and instructors can support the students as they work through their project and with their industry partners. And we felt at this point that we were getting closer to finding a better balance in terms of the assessment for students and the course workload for both instructors and students. So now I'll pass it along to Natalie, who will show you the feedback that we got after this second version of the course.
Yeah, so we ran this version a little bit longer and got some feedback through our evaluations. So overall, students found it good. There's positive feedback. They liked the group work, working with others. They like working with industry partners and gaining that experience of feeling like they have an impact on an organization out there and actually working for something tangible rather than just a case study. Provided a little bit of real world experience of something that they could do once they were actually in the workplace. And they got to practice teamwork and a little bit of leadership. So there was always a student that was a little bit more of a leader. Some of the negative feedback were around group dynamics, and I think that's no surprise. Working in groups can be challenging if your group has issues. Some groups were working really well, but it's always something that sort of came up and that instructors had to deal with. And now they were saying that 50% at that point was too much. It was too high of a percentage of a grade. When we had 30%, they were saying it was a lot of work for 30%. So over there, still trying to figure out what would be the good thing. And then the quality of interactions with the partners. Some partners, they sometimes wouldn't hear back from them on the timeline that would work for them. So there was a little bit of issues with the quality of interactions with the industry partners. Then we also got feedback from the industry partners as well. So industry partners really liked the work that our students did. They liked the quality of the reports. They loved having a number of ideas. So some of our courses run, for example, like 50 students in groups of 5. So that's 10 different reports. Ideas and options of things that they can implement in their workplace. That's all they enjoy. Also, the number of questions that are exactly what I just said. The number of student questions that can come up, and a number of emails that they have to reply to. Sometimes it's the same questions that they have to answer over and over. So that can be a little bit hard to manage for some industry partners, especially when they're busy working full time as well. And industry partners also had feedback on the communication style between our students and industry. So that's something we realized, that some of our students might not have the greatest professional business skills, communication skills that's needed. And some industry partners were a little bit put off by that when working with our students. So that was sort of the feedback from the industry partners' perspective. And then we got also feedback from the instructors. Our instructors liked having a real world experience in their course. It's something that they could relate to, especially as they have worked in that field, and being able to actually guide the students through that. It was a way as well to be engaged differently in the course than what they were doing before and then dealing with the final exam, for example. They had to experience new technologies and pedagogies as well. So we didn't always have webinars in our courses. It was something that was rare. So that's a different way, learning to do webinars, learning to use the different platforms. So that was something they enjoyed, and they enjoyed the relationship with the industry partners and having those conversations. Some negative, more negative feedback, some depending on the course. Sometimes we've had a little bit more challenges securing partners. That was mostly at the beginning. So it's not, we always ended up having a partner, but it's just the stress before the course starts of having to not, this is the unknown, or the stress of figuring all of this out, the short timeline before the course starts was a little bit more of a negative feedback. There's also upfront preparations for instructors. So making sure that they, like Heather was mentioning, that they go and vet the projects that are submitted, that they have the conversation with the industry partner. In the past, for instructors, they wouldn't really start working on their course until a few weeks prior. Sometimes, we have an industry partner that contacts us 4 months in advance. So we have to approve that as well. Instructors had to deal with the group dynamics, and that's always challenging. Not every group is the same, so there's always something new, and dealing with those things. And also finding the data or the information to support sometimes a lower mark. So if we had students, a group that had group dynamic issues, maybe there was one student that really did not do a lot of work. When we go by the rubric, sometimes that doesn't really account for that. So how do you know really who's right? When somebody says that their peer hasn't done anything, but then the peer says, so dealing with all of that and doing that detective work could be a little bit frustrating. So that was the feedback. And then after that, this feedback, so this was just up to the winter term this year. And all this time gathering this feedback, we've worked on another version, which is version 3, which Nydia will go over now.
Thank you, Natalie. So after reviewing all this feedback, which was pretty thorough, and after more than a year of working with Riipen and our instructors and hearing from our students, we realized that there were 2 main issues and challenges that we really needed to tackle, and that we could actually tackle with the design of the course. And those were completing an experiential project in the online environment and working in groups in the online environment. So we decided to work in the redesign of the experiential learning project towards tackling those challenges, and in a way that would be completely intertwined and incorporated in what students had to do. So one thing, redesign the experiential learning project, so as you see it now here in the screen, in 4 components. The first one is the group contract, the project plan, a draft report, and a final report. Now, to complete each of these components, we created a set of templates that include all the information that the students need to complete the assignment, but also that address the most common gaps that students found, for example, working in a group. Just to cite an example, the project plan. A big issue working in a group, no planning, students expressing that some of the group members are not completing some tasks, or they don't know how to reach them. There's no clarity in terms of when each person is completing which part of the project. So we included the project plan as part of the component of the whole experiential project. So to explain you each of these components, the group contract, its purpose is to support accountability and communication within the group. So in the group contract, the students are asked to self-enroll in a group, list the members per names, availability times, assign a project lead, determine the goals that everybody has for the project to make sure that everybody is on the same page, decide on which communication channel will the group will use. What are the individual skills that every person brings to the team? How conflict management will be tackled throughout the completion of the project. So that is the first component that students are asked to deliver at the end of the second week of the course. After that, the group has to complete the project plan that allows them for organizing themselves, identify the tasks and responsibilities that each member in the group will complete by a specific date. So schedule is set at that time as well. The first component that includes the application of the content is the draft report. And at this point, the students have to start working on getting to know the industry partner, getting information from the industry partner, and completing some of the initial components of that allows them to apply what they're learning. But at this point also, we ignite the reflection of students in terms of how the group dynamic is doing and how they are actually performing for the group. So we included a group evaluation and a peer evaluation. This also serves as a source of information for the instructor, because at this point, getting this information from each of the groups, instructors can see if there are issues within a group, and they can start connecting with a student, specific student, or with the group, and support them in their group dynamic early on, instead of waiting until the end of the project. Then students have some time to continue working on the project. The students get feedback from the instructor on the draft report and from the industry partner, and then they're able to complete the final report, which consolidates the knowledge of the student and also asks for a self-reflection of what they learned, but also as how they worked within the group. And also we ask again for a peer evaluation. The peer evaluation is what, in the self-reflection, is one of the strategies that we use to incorporate individual grading for each of the students, as that's something that they were requesting us to do. Students didn't want their grade to be based solely in the group work. They also wanted to have some opportunity to reflect their individual learning, and the peer evaluation and the self-evaluation is what allows us to do that. I think this responds one of the questions in the chat about how we supported it. We created templates to make sure in each template there is all the information detailed for the student on what they have to do, and what is the information that, as they're working as a group, they need to incorporate and exchange between the members of the group to work collaboratively together. We also include rubrics for each of these components that students have access to, so they know exactly what is expected from them and how they're graded. Throughout the project, throughout the course, there are 3 live sessions as well. One at the beginning, in which the instructor has the opportunity to explain what the experiential learning project is and provide tips in terms of how to communicate, work as a group, and resolve the initial questions that students might have at that point. Prior to the submission of the draft report, there is another live session to also address questions related to that upcoming submission of the draft report. And prior to the final report, also instructor opens the line again for another live session to answer questions and support the students before they submit their final project. Finally, Natalie was mentioning the stress that instructors need to go through, sometimes have to go through when we don't secure an industry partner close enough to the opening of the course. So to support instructors, we develop a case study that we have and we have available for instructors as a backup in case the day to open the course comes in and we don't have an industry partner working with us at that point. Then instructor has a case study that can serve as the industry partner with all the information and the business profile, and so students can start right away working on their experiential learning project. So what we learned, maybe we can change the slide. Thank you, Heather. Teamwork. It's mentioned here in this slide 3 times because we really cannot do this without the contribution of every person in the team. And we really need to work on this continuously. We continuously share information, exchange feedback, we brainstorm, we try solutions, and we keep trying. And we say, don't be afraid to try, because there's no set formula in terms of a course design or planning on running an experiential learning project online, given all these moving factors that we have in the online environment with our students, with the instructors, so we constantly, and in the field, so we constantly need to take the pulse of what's happening and what's happening with each cohort, and adapt and redesign and improve and work together to make it happen. So if you have any questions, I think we can.
I can jump in here as well.
Yeah, there are many questions. I'm opening the chat now.
We did get some questions as you were going, so thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. And I think my favorite thing about it when I heard it the first time was how honest it was about some of the challenges that it takes to overcome to really get project-based experiential learning off the ground. So I'll read out some questions from the chat, and I think you can address them as you think is best. I think the first one was for you, Natalie, when you were talking about evaluating the courses that were a good fit for Riipen. There was a question around what you used as a strategy for that evaluation.
So the evaluation determining the courses. It was sort of a mix between the course content and obviously working with the instructors. So I definitely connected with the instructors on if they thought that was a good fit for them, for their course, and something that students could work on, or if there's at least a piece. So for example, like training and development was a course in HR. So trying to see if there's at least a little piece of a massive training project or something that the students could work on. So looking at that, also the other piece was also looking at Riipen. It's, I think, one of the lessons that we've learned is that even though we think it'd be great to have a project into a course, if Riipen doesn't have necessarily partners that are asking for that, we might find ourselves in a situation where we don't have a partner. So I think it kind of goes both ways of trying to, see what would be great for our students and what, they would likely get into when they get into the workplace, or something that would be great for them to practice, so that's more tangible and practical, but also looking at the demand. So it's not necessarily only looking at the learning objective, but we definitely had to look at the demand as well, and that's something that we learned along the way. So there's, like I said, there's some courses that we went into that in the end we backed out, and we didn't offer them as experiential learning project anymore.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And it's definitely a learning process. Janae's actually just clarifying here, and she says, I was hoping to hear more about the evaluation strategy used after the pilot experience, and then used continuously to evaluate the experience with the instructor, students, and industry partners.
Oh, okay. So the more like the course evaluation part. So we did mid-course evaluations for our courses. Usually we only evaluate our courses at the end of the course. For these courses, some of them we did mostly a mid-course evaluation to gather feedback on how things are going, and we did one at the end. We did do a survey of all of our students in HR, so that was in the first year as well, to kind of gather feedback on students that had already done the Riipen project and see if they, how they thought about it, what they enjoyed about it, if they learned from their group and how their dynamics were and all that stuff. And then there was also gathering feedback from students that hadn't done a Riipen project yet, and gauge their interest in doing that. We also asked them about the webinars at that point, if it was something that they thought they could get into. When it comes to the so instructors, it was just from casual conversation after the course or throughout the course. We would often have conversations or phone calls or emails that I received from instructors talking about it. And when we came to the industry partner, and maybe Heather, you can kind of jump in here, a lot of the feedback that I got was actually from the instructors telling me what the industry partners were experiencing. But I think Heather also could jump into that, because she's obviously facilitated courses dealing with industry partners. So Heather, if you have anything to add, go ahead.
I think part of the role of the instructor is to keep up the ongoing communication with the industry partner as the course proceeds. So just, constantly checking in with them if everything is going okay. And then at the end, our instructors are encouraged to touch base with the industry partners again to ask, did you get something out of the projects that were submitted to you? Would you be willing to engage in another project with our program again? Those kinds of things. So it's that kind of feedback that typically the instructor would seek.
Is that templated? Do you have resources available for us to do that?
Not for the industry partner, but for the students, we certainly have a templated survey.
Add to that as well, Riipen does also offer a series of project templates. I know there's a few questions on how the industry partners would go about designing projects that might be a good fit for the students and their learning. So part of what we've done is actually developed both course and project templates to help align those learning objectives. And if anybody has any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me afterwards. That's a big part of what we've been working on, is facilitating better connections between industry partners and our courses.
So I don't want to hijack this, but my question wasn't so much about project templates and stuff. I've seen that in the webinars with Riipen. It was more around like one of my concerns is unconsidered work that the instructors are going to have to do with implementing this new process. So things like check-in email, status updates, things like that are ways that we can reduce the initial workload for instructors. And I'm just wondering if there are communication templates to facilitate our check-ins with industry partners, for example.
Have you developed anything like that?
No,
Okay.
no, we don't have communication template. Like we have, we talk about roles so that they have a clear understanding of, but not necessarily a communication template. Is there any other questions?
Yes. So a few other questions along the same lines. I think further to Chris's question, he's wondering how much more work is this for an instructor than traditional methods? And I think, Heather, maybe you can speak to this.
Of course. It sounds a bit overwhelming, I'm sure. But in fact, it's just different. So I would say prior to us implementing these projects with Riipen, the instructors spent a lot of time monitoring discussion boards, creating and grading other course assignments and so forth. So that was where the time was spent. Not so much time up front preparing for the course, because semester after semester is pretty much the same. But where the time saving comes in is once the students are engaged in that project, it's worth 50% of the grade. It's all fairly structured now. When we have the students working in groups of 5, even if you have a class of 50, you're only grading 10 reports. And we have rubrics to support that, so it's a lot quicker to do the grading. Some of the time is spent before the course starts, as others have mentioned. Maybe 2, 3, 4 months before the course, you're having to be on guard in case an industry partner submits a project. You need to review it and get your ducks in a row before the course starts. But once the course starts, it's fairly structured, and it's more about connecting with the students, making sure they know what they need to do next, and we have that in a pretty much structured approach now, I would say. So the time, it probably is about the same amount of time with or without the Riipen project, but the time is spent differently.
If I can add to that, I think where we've seen an increase in time possibly for instructors is at the beginning, when they first dip their toes into a project. So there's a little bit of an onboarding phase, trying to understand the process, trying to get familiar with Riipen, just a learning curve of having to deal with the project and running into these issues. So that first time, I would say, is maybe a little bit of an increase. So, we've had talks about maybe having a little compensation at our end for that period of time. But once they've done it once, it runs pretty smoothly, because now they're familiar with the process. So that's where I would see an increase in their time spent or change, I guess, in the time spent.
That's great. Thank you both. And I would say that that's similar to what we've heard as feedback from our instructors, is that the time is just differently allocated. Along those same lines, in the design process, there's a question around who designs the assignments. So the question is, are assignments designed completely by educators and the industry partners simply select the one that appeals to them? Or is the assignment design an interactive process? And I know you've done some work working with industry partners post-submission, so maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I can speak to that. So basically, the instructor designs the assignment for posting on the Riipen website. And in designing that assignment, the instructor is trying to make it meet the objectives of the course, obviously, but also making it general enough that once it's posted on Riipen, it can attract a wide variety of different potential industry partners. So having said that, once an industry partner does submit a project, usually there is a little bit of negotiation that has to happen to fine-tune exactly what the project will look like. So it meets both the needs of the instructor, the assignment, and the industry partner. So there's an initial assignment posting, but more often than not, it will be fine-tuned. Usually doesn't take that long. But it will be fine-tuned to make sure it meets everybody's needs.
Great. Thanks, Heather. Neely or Natalie, did you want to add anything? Nope. Okay.
No, I'm good.
Perfect. We did have another question around some specifics. So the question is, can you talk more specifically about a project example with a client and what the students actually did?
Heather, you can take that one because you've done many.
Oh, there's so many. I'm trying to think. Well, I mean, we have really fairly straightforward ones, like building a website. So the end product is going to be some sort of website, or it might be evaluating an existing onboarding program and making recommendations for changes or improvements. So the final report would be a summary of their findings, and then areas for improvements with recommendations for changes, and then a bit of an action plan as to how to go about implementing those changes. So it can be something like a 8 to 10 page written report. It can be a PowerPoint presentation that captures the key elements. It can be a website. It can be a strategy. It can be almost anything depending on the course.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I would just add to that, I think a lot of the times we see industry partners giving feedback on that as well, once they speak to the instructors about certain deliverables that might be more helpful for them. And then the instructor can talk about whether or not they find that to be a good fit for them as well.
Right.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. So there was one that was posted to the chat around just additional course content that you may have added to courses as a result of feedback from industry partners about the students' communication style. So the question is there any course content that has been added to address industry partners' concerns about communication style from students?
So we didn't want to create a module on business communication, or we certainly were concerned about that, in making sure not only that the industry partner communicates well with students, or students with the industry partner. So, but at the same time, we didn't want to increase the workload on the student side, when the students' main concern was the main topics for the course. So what we did is we included that information within the different components that we have. For example, in the first live session that the instructor runs, presenting the course, presenting the project, at that point, the instructor starts sharing some tips on communication, best practices, recommendations on how to handle things off, and maybe provide 1 or 2 resources that students can read on their own at their own leisure. Throughout the components of the project too, we are very clear in terms of what information they need to request from the industry partner, for example. So we try to guide them and keep them focused on what they need to develop for the project, and making it in a very professional fashion.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know, Heather, if you want to add a little bit more to
I
that.
think that about covers it.
Yeah, I think it's been, our mentality has been more, it's the responsibility a bit of the instructor to kind of guide them and react. So we had talked about maybe adding, like, for example, like a project management video from lynda.com into the course. But, if those are issues that come up in the course, or if they're hearing from students that they need more information about a specific topic, we just kind of ask them to be fluid and maybe try to find a different resource and share with the class into an announcement or something like that. So it's not necessarily as part of the course itself, but just it's part of the guiding principles of the course.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think we're right on time. So I did just want to end with a comment here from Lorraine, who says, I want to recognize the work that Natalie, Nydia, Heather, and others have put into the process of maturing this process and experience for instructors and students. Well done, and thank you so much. And thank you so much for sharing your experience and your knowledge with us today. I am going to put my email in the chat, so if anybody has any questions that we didn't get to today, I will be happy to take those in my email and liaise them to Natalie, Nydia, and Heather. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining, and we will be also distributing the recording after the session.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.